If you've ever cranked up a Led Zeppelin track and felt the ground shake beneath your feet, chances are you were feeling the thunder of
John Bonham,
the man behind the drums.
Oh, well, I'm John Bonham. I always liked making drum sounds when I was a kid.
Bonham was born in Redditch, England in 1948, and from the start, it was clear the guy was obsessed with drums. He started out banging on whatever he could find: coffee tins, pots, anything that made a sound.
I got my first drum kit when I was 10.
Eventually, he got his first real kit and began to teach himself by watching and listening to his heroes like Gene Krupa.
And we went to see a film with Gene Krupa, and it was just amazing. Up here in the Midlands, I used to buy completely different records, you know.
When you moving right up close to me,
Johnny Kidd and the Pirates,
Johnny Kidd and the Pirates were a strong influence then.
the shakes all over me.
And, you know, for me, soul music was a strong influence there.
and James Brown.
James Brown was a big favourite because, you know, the drum sound was just amazing. I thought, I'm going to get that sound. I used to play, you know, but I used to have a job as well. I used to be working with my father, the building trade. We used to be good builders there.
By the mid-60s, Bonham was a regular on the local music scene, known for his wild energy and feel for rhythm.
But, you know, the job gradually gets less and the music more, you know, that's what seems to happen. You know, we left school and we formed small groups and things like that. And played locally and everything.
One of the bands he played in was Crawling King Snakes, which just so happened to have a young singer named Robert Plant.
When I was 16, I went to a group with Robert singing. The gig went incredibly well because he was really great.
In the crowd watching us was this larger-than-life guy with his beautiful girlfriend. He got a hold of me afterwards and he said, well, you're okay, but you'd be a lot better with a proper drummer behind you. And I said, so Jesus Christ, here we go.
The first time we played together, we were about 16, and it was really good.
John was amazing. He was a really powerful drummer. I watched him with absolute amazement. He was just fantastic.
But it's so competitive playing locally anyway. You'd like to have a time, go out on the road and everything would be roses, and then all of a sudden, no more gigs, no more money, and you're back to where you started, you know.
Pat became his wife.
In 1967, Bonham agreed to return to a way of life while keeping in touch with Plant.
I knew there were singers who had more chops than me, but I was just out there throwing it up in the air. I had caftans, painted faces, bells ringing, incense blazing, and it's just...
Robert used to get into more trouble and mischief than any of the friends I have up here, you know. It's ridiculous, you know.
John came up to me and said, well, what's all that about? So I said, yeah, you're right. What is that all about?
It was the end of 67. We got back together and the playing went incredibly well.
Plant formed Band of Joy and chose Bonham as the drummer.
So we formed the Band of Joy. We wanted to mix the blues with psychedelia. We wanted to be a part of that huge movement. We played at Frank Freeman's. We played Middle Earth in London.
The band recorded demos, but no album.
We went down to Tin Pan Alley and we recorded Memory Lane, which was my first adventure in songwriting. Sadly, we never got it released, and not many people liked us, but we liked us.
In 1968, American singer Tim Rose toured Britain, and asked Band of Joy to open his concerts.
Pat was screaming at John saying, I told you to stay away from him. It'll get you nowhere.
When Rose returned months later, Bonham joined Rose's band.
And so he went off with Tim Rose and played I Got a Loneliness and Morning Dew.
That's how it used to go, really. I mean, we had a kid then, so you'd end up having to get a job in the professional group to get a little bit of money to sort of live with, really.
Fast forward a couple of years. Jimmy Page, former Yardbirds guitarist.
I went to a palm reading in LA, and the palmist said, you're going to be making a decision very soon, which is going to change your life. A meeting happened like 2 or 3 days after the palmist, where the rest of the group said, that's it, we want to fold. I mean, it was a shock.
Is putting together a new band. First known as the New Yardbirds, and later as Led Zeppelin, The Vision, heavy blues-infused rock.
I immediately went, well, now I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to form my own group, and I know exactly what it is that I want to do with it. And I just needed to find a powerful vocalist. And so there was a singer called Terry Reid. He registered with me, and I thought, I'm going to aim for him. So I asked Peter Grant if he could track down Terry Reid. Peter Grant was the manager of the Yardbirds, and bless him, he really believed in me. I mean, this is the thing that once the Yardbirds folded, and I said, well, I want to start a group. He was there, you know, he said, great, you know, and whatever help I can give. The next thing that I hear is that, oh, well, unfortunately, Terry Reid signed a solo deal with Mickey Mouse. And I thought, oh, yeah.
Off the press. Right, I know that one. For you. Right.
I thought, well, this is super ruthless, but nevertheless, Terry Reid suggested a singer from the Midlands in a band called Obs Tweedle, and I thought, this is an unusual name, this is a bit odd.
I just fell from favour everywhere. Things were pretty tough for me then. I had a brown suitcase and some penicillin, and I was homeless, I had nowhere to live, so I got a gig with this band called Obs Tweedle.
And he finds Plant to front the group.
He and Peter Grant came up to have a look at me. He asked me if I knew where he could find Robert Plant. And I said, yeah, right here.
He was doing some wonderful improvised vocals, and I thought they were marvellous. So I invited him round my house.
I still had nowhere to live, sadly. So I took my suitcase, got a train to Pangbourne, and knocked on another door.
The two click right away.
Yeah, we had a really good connection. And I think, you know, we sort of looking through my records, I got that one, and you know, and I played him a Joan Baez version of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and said, well, if you can sing that top line there, I've got an arrangement that goes with it. And it just really, really dovetailed together. It was beautiful. He was so, he just sang beautifully.
Baby, baby.
When it comes time to find a drummer,
We knew something was in the air. I could feel this stuff around me. Jimmy's guitar playing, it was just tremendous, amazing. Jimmy then said to me, well, we've got this drummer lined up.
Plant immediately recommends his old buddy Bonham.
And before he went any further, I said, wait a minute. There is no drummer on the planet to compare with John Bonham. He's magnificent. He was playing with Tim Rose. Jimmy said, oh, well, if that's the case, let's go and see him.
But here's the twist. Bonham's already touring with another artist, Tim Rose, and getting paid pretty well. Joining a brand new band with no guarantee of success? Not exactly a no-brainer.
My wife, Mo, read that, oh, Jimmy's forming a band. You should give him a call. See if he wants a bass player. I went, no, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, I've got these an album. No, she said, and she just insisted, give him a call, please. So I did. And I said, hey, Jim, heard you forming a band? He went, yeah. I said, you want a bass player? He went, well, actually, yes. But there's a problem. I said, what's that? He said, well, the drummer's playing with Tim Rose, and he's getting 40 quid a week. Can we best it? So we decided, yeah, we probably could.
Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin's soon-to-be manager Peter Grant weren't about to take maybe for an answer. They knew Bonham was the real deal. So they started sending him letters, telegrams, messages, over 40 telegrams, according to some stories. It became a full-on campaign to win him over. Plant kept pushing him too, saying, this band is going to be something big.
I said, John, you've got to listen to Jimmy play. He's amazing. John said, not a chance. I said, you got to be crazy. You don't want to do this stuff, playing electric folk.
Eventually, Bonham gave in and thanked the rock gods he did.
Come with me. He said, Pat would kill me. Don't say that. I said, I'll talk to Pat and your mom.
Peter Grant managed to get a 2-hour rehearsal space in Gerrard Street. So we all get there, and I've got my equipment set up. John Paul Jones is there with his session equipment.
Literally, it was just wall-to-wall amplifiers. We just picked one up. Hello. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. I'm so-and-so, he's so-and-so else.
On bass guitar, John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones.
And John's got his drums.
It was quite strange, really, meeting John Paul and Jimmy, you know, coming from where I'd come from. You know, I'd sort of thought, you know, it was a bit of a joke getting sort of telegrams and things. You know, there's a chance of becoming one of the Yardbirds. It was like a gift from heaven, wasn't it?
On drums, John Bonham.
Well, I was pretty shy. You know, the best thing to do when you're in a situation like that is not to say much and just to sort of soldier along and suss it all out, sort of thing. The first time we played together, you know, you could tell it was going to be a good group, you know, not being sort of flash about it. But I am.
Marvellous.
When it finally came to a halt, I'm absolutely convinced that everyone knew that that was a life-changing experience.
Lead guitar, Jimmy Page. And myself, Robert Plant.
And I think there was so much kinetic energy, so much energy that needed to come out for everybody.
Treat me the way that you want to do.
From the very first rehearsals, it was obvious. Bonham wasn't just a drummer, he was a force of nature. His beats didn't just keep the tempo, they added soul, swagger, and serious power.
We went into Olympic Studios at night. Over a few weeks, the very first time we go in is the 25th of September in 1968.
It went so well, really, that, you know, the group started to make the album straight after coming back from Scandinavia. You know, and how long have we been together about then? What, a month?
Songs like Good Times, Bad Times.
John, Jimmy, and John Paul were much more connected in these sessions than I was because they were recording it live. They had to make it work on the floor. A take is a take. So it was an electric atmosphere. And I just tried to land on top of it all.
Bonham's famous right foot, capable of playing impossibly fast triplets without the use of a double bass pedal, still mystifies drummers today.
Being the drummer, first my attention went to John Bonham and his foot thing that he did in Good Times, Bad Times, which was at the time totally unique.
He was an innovator, Howard, you know, from the very beginning, from note one of the first Led Zeppelin record, Good Times, Bad Times. He had his sound and he had the way he played, and he was doing this thing with his foot that no one had really done in rock and roll.
His groove on Good Times, Bad Times was ahead of its time, and his sense of timing and swing owes as much to Motown and jazz as it does to hard rock.
I was very much in love with John's right foot. I had great respect for it. And I used to try and highlight it and help it along and give it space.
In the days of my youth, I was told what it means.
So I could be doing a riff and just leave a note out and something of his would pop through. And the rhythm would just suddenly come alive.
Jimmy produced the album, which was great, you know, because it's got a different sound, and I like that.
When my woman left home for a blind man, but I still don't seem to care.
Rather than keep the Yardbirds name, the group became strong enough for me to start fresh, you know, it was a decision that we'd change the name.
Keith Moon had suggested the name Led Zeppelin, and I thought that would be a great name to use.
And I thought, yeah, that's a terrible name. Nobody's going to remember that. But I couldn't come up with a better one, so Led Zeppelin we were.
I'm never gonna let you go till I like your
So suddenly I was a dad and I was nearly married. And I was in this group that was now going to be called Led Zeppelin.
It's a funny thing, you know, you couldn't play big gigs in England. You know, you'd say, you want to take some dates on Led Zeppelin, you know, and all this sort of thing. And, you know, people wouldn't even book the band.
So Atlantic decided that the record is going to come out on the 12th of January, but only in America. So Peter gets a tour together for us.
It was Christmas Eve, I think we had to leave.
You suddenly find the albums coming out, and so we sort of had to go to America to play, you know. I was concerned. I wouldn't feel home there at all.
Pat kept saying, I told you not to work with him. But she and my wife, Maureen, were really good friends. So they had a mutual overview of celebration for what John was doing and what I was doing. And we just rolled with it.
During Led Zeppelin's first tour of the United States in December 1968, Bonham became friends with Vanilla Fudge's drummer, Carmine Appice.
They're good friends because they were friends when we had nothing, you know.
We're supporting the Vanilla Fudge to begin with, and they were the only group who took us under their wing.
Appice introduced him to Ludwig drums, which he then used for the rest of his career.
Carmine and John Bonham picked up such a great repartee. They used to watch each other and mimic each other and play little parts. It was a great exchange of energies between everybody.
There was 5 shows with the Vanilla Fudge. It was actually in the one in Oregon where I really realised during the drum solo. I was standing there with Jones here and I just said to Jesus Christ, where'd you find this guy?
The album is already being played on the underground radio. And people are really curious to see this band that they're hearing. So we were going to go in there like with a hatchet. And just play like we'd never played before, just throw everything that we'd got into it.
We're backstage at the Fillmore, and Peter Grant says, well, whatever happens, if you don't crack it here, it's over. The anticipation was overwhelming. I mean, really overwhelming.
We knew after that one that we were on the right track.
Dazed and confused, Moby Dick, and what is and what should never be, put his incredible technique and feel on full display.
To come back to England with what we'd experienced, I just had to keep quiet. I mean, over here, the record wasn't out yet. So Bonzo and I used to get together and go, well, what was that? Well, I don't know. What happened? I don't know.
Oh, crikey. It was just amazing, just ridiculous. I mean, we came back from America and we'd gone through a big change. You know, we were feeling really good, you know, but it does affect you, you know.
It felt good, as it might. Especially as we were doing it without the press, who didn't seem to like us. The few reviews we did seem to get The obvious one being the Rolling Stone review.
A lot of those writers at that time, I don't know whether they were studying the music to criticize it or whether they were more concerned about the sort of social activities. But do you really care about other people's responses if you're playing like that? Well, the answer is, unfortunately, yeah. That's where you can come unstuck. Fortunately, as 4 guys, we did not care that much. We were more caring about how we turned ourselves on.
You know, the first album, that just got ripped to pieces. Like, loads of saying, oh no, I don't like Zeppelin sort of music for some reason, you know. So we all thought, you know, it was a bit of a joke.
The venues are jam-packed, so what people are hearing as opposed to what they're reading is what really makes the band. With Dazed and Confused, the intensity is building, it's positively evil. I knew what we had, and I just really wanted to knock everybody dead with it. I had a whole vision for the next album. So I called for a rehearsal at the house.
He just comes in and plays what he's written, and then we all together suss it all out.
I've been dazed and confused, so long it's not true.
We went into Olympic Studios in April, and we're just really excited to be back in the studio again.
John Henry Bonham, Moby Dick.
His drum solo, Moby Dick, often lasted 20 minutes.
John Bonham's kit was going to be spread right across the stereo picture. So then you could have the placement of the instruments within and the layering within. He knew how to tune, he had the science of tuning the drum. So that when he hit it, it just resonated out the top, it just projected.
In some sections, he used his bare hands on his drums to imitate the sound of a phased hand drum.
And he played with his wrists. It's not all this forearm smashing. He could also do an accent on the bass drum and you'd feel it, you know, more or less in your gut.
He was so inventive. Inspiring to play with, you know. You'd hear the stuff and, well, I don't want to just go all over that. I want to do something that will fit in really well with it. That was what I used to like to do best, is to fit in.
So everybody could be heard. That was the important thing for me, that everybody could be heard what they were doing on a Zeppelin record.
But what isn't, what should never be.
The thing with What Is and What Should Never Be is that it's got these laid-back, gentler verses, and then it comes in with, I won't call them a power chorus, but it's more intensity to it.
The wind sees spin straight away, the day way up high in the sky. It's wild, but the wind won't blow.
So that you could then illustrate John Bonham's power and the group's power as well, the whole thing.
Led Led Zeppelin exploded onto the scene in 1969, and Bonham was right there at the center of the storm. With Page's wild guitar riffs, Plant's banshee vocals, and John Paul Jones's rock-solid bass, Bonham's drumming tied it all together.
We opened a door to America and there was a glint of light. And obviously you're going to sort of kick the door open and go in and really, it's a massive continent. And we really wanted to get the word across through live performances. 3 of these guys had families already at that point in time. And this is our 5th tour in 7 months. So they were away from their children for a long time.
It is difficult when you've got a family. I flew with my wife, Mo, to all the good spots. She'd come to New York. She'd just take the kids shopping and go to the shows, and it was great. And then they'd go home and leave us to get on with touring the rest of the country.
It's so much easier to tour around England. Whereas if you're in America, you're all day in a hotel somewhere having arguments with bloody, turd heads and everything. It does affect you, like what's happened previously in the day.
Gig after gig, night after night. Maybe we had 20 songs to choose from at that point in time. Soon we'd have 40.
We came back from America and everybody wanted to book the group, then it was like a change of tune,
There was no publicity, and strangely, we'd get to a British show. And you were, how did these people know we were coming? And we figured out it was just word of mouth.
What made Bonham so special? It wasn't just how hard he hit.
No one hit the snare drum harder.
Though, yeah, he hit hard. It was his groove, his dynamics, his jazz-influenced fills.
I can remember John doing a sound check at Newport Jazz Festival, and I could just see all of James Brown's drummers coming out of different doors going, what is going on here? And he's going, oh yeah, I know who's watching me. But it was great,
And how he played with feel instead of just counting beats. He made the drums talk.
It's what made Zeppelin unique in that way. It's just the way he approached rhythm and what he did.
You can hear it clearly on epic tracks like When the Levee Breaks, massive, booming, unforgettable.
And nowhere do you hear a snare drum being hit as hard as that opening salvo to that track.
It is monumental. There is no drummer can play that groove like John Bonham did.
His hard hitting was evident on many Led Zeppelin songs, including Moby Dick, Led Zeppelin 2,
John Henry Bonham, Moby Dick.
Immigrant Song, Led Zeppelin 3, When the Levee Breaks, Led Zeppelin 4, Kashmir, Physical Graffiti, The Ocean, Houses of the Holy,
1, 2, 3, 4.
and Achilles' Last Stand, Presence. Today, Bonham is still considered one of the greatest rock drummers of all time.
Oh, Bonzo was the best hard rock drummer ever, hands down. I mean, no one comes within a mile of him.
He, to me, was the best rock drummer. He did play with the ferocious energy, but he had the finesse as well. Wasn't just a pounder. He played, very dynamically and played beautifully and musically for that music.
He was the best.
Without a doubt. They were the first band to blow us off the stage. Led Zeppelin.
The best rock and roll drummer in the world, John Bonham. The ferocious power and attack of the combination enabled the band to turn from a juggernaut into a dragonfly in a moment. They took the US by storm, ruling the stadiums of America.
His style has inspired generations of musicians, and his beats continue to echo through music history.
Dang! Drummers argue long into the night about how did he get that monstrous sound, the size of it. You know, not just what he plays, but how he plays it and how he gets. It's like he's playing on a mountain. He's got, you know, the earth shakes when he hits those tom-toms. How's he do that? We're all scratching our heads about that.
He kept great time. He was fearless. He'd do things that you think, you know, how's he going to do this?
How did John Bonham get that drum sound? You know, was it the way that you mic'd the drums or the way you tuned the drums? The reason John Bonham sounded that way is because he was John Bonham.
For me, like, emotion in rock drumming is just John Bonham.
John Bonham is one of my all-time biggest drum heroes. In fact, I have his symbol tattooed on my leg, and he's always been one of my biggest drum heroes. And not only me, I mean, he's influenced, I think, every drummer that's picked up a pair of sticks, you know, beyond the 70s.
In the end, John Bonham didn't just join Led Zeppelin, he helped define it.
Obviously, no discussion about drum sounds and drum playing would be complete without talking about John Bonham and the Led Zeppelin drum sound.
His story is proof that when talent, timing, and passion collide, legends are born.
The first time we played together, you know, you could tell it was going to be a good group, you know, not being sort of flash about it. But I am.
If you have something that you know is different in yourself, then you have to put work into it. You have to work and work and work, but you also have to believe in it. But as long as you can stay really true, your aim is true, you can realize your dreams. I do believe that. I believe that that can be done because this is what happens.